He never robbed a bank. He never held a gun. He did not need to. For decades, Bernie Madoff did not take money from strangers. He took it from friends, from neighbors, from charities that fed the poor, from widows who trusted him with everything they had left. And for years, no one stopped him. Not the regulators, not the banks, not even the powerful men who sat across from him and believed they were too smart to be fooled. Because the biggest lie in Wall Street history didn't hide in the shadows. It sat in a corner office, wearing an expensive suit, smiling. In 1960, a 22-year-old from Queens started a small trading firm with $5,000. Money he had saved as a lifeguard. Money he had earned installing sprinkler systems. His name was Bernie Madoff. There was no dynasty behind him, no inherited seat on the exchange, no family name that opened doors before he even entered the room. What he had was ambition and an instinct for a system most people still did not understand. Wall Street in the 1960s still ran on paper, on phone calls, on old relationships, on men who knew exactly which clubs mattered and which names belonged. Madoff saw something different. He saw a market that could run on machines instead of men. He pushed early into electronic trading, helping build the tools that would eventually make floor traders less powerful and screens more important. And it worked. His firm grew. His reputation grew with it. By the early 1990s, Madoff was no longer just running a trading firm. He was helping shape the exchange itself, serving as chairman of NASDAQ and advising regulators on how markets should operate. That was the genius of his position. He did not look like an outsider attacking Wall Street. He looked like Wall Street's future. The man who would one day break the market's trust had helped write the rules it operated by. But beside the legitimate trading business, there was another side to Bernie Madoff's empire. A quieter side, a private side, a side almost no one outside a small circle ever saw. And that was where the perfect lie began. Alongside his legitimate trading business, Madoff quietly built something else. An investment advisory business, not advertised like other funds, not promoted with loud promises, not sold to strangers through glossy campaigns. Access to it felt like joining a private club, one where the real attraction was not only the returns, it was the exclusivity. Madoff would sometimes turn investors away, tell them the fund was closed, full, unavailable. And that refusal did something strange to people with money. It made them want in more. Word spread through country clubs in Palm Beach, through synagogues and charitable boards in New York, through dinner parties where someone always knew someone who had gotten access. He claimed to trade using something called split strike conversion, an options strategy that, in theory, could produce steady gains while limiting losses. In practice, what investors saw was even more seductive. Year after year, the fund returned around 10 to 12%. Not spectacular, not insane, not the kind of number that screams fraud, just steady. Even when markets struggled, even when everyone else was losing money, Bernie Madoff's numbers kept climbing. Smooth, reliable, almost boring. And boring on Wall Street can be the most dangerous number of all. Because spectacular returns invite suspicion, but steady returns invite comfort. Money poured in. Feeder funds in New York, London, and Geneva began funneling billions of client dollars into Madoff's operation, some charging their own investors a fee for the privilege of being close to him. But the real product was not performance, it was belonging. People were not just buying returns, they were buying the feeling that they had been let into the room where the smart money lived. By the 2000s, Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities appeared to manage tens of billions of dollars. His client list read like a directory of trust itself: charitable foundations, university endowments, family fortunes, Hollywood names, institutions built to support Holocaust survivors, depending on his returns to fund their work. Madoff sat on industry committees. He advised regulators on how markets should be policed. In some rooms, the man everyone should have been watching was the one being asked how to build a better watchdog. But not everyone believed the story. In 1999, a financial analyst named Harry Markopolos ran the numbers on Madoff's returns and reached an unsettling conclusion. They were not just impressive, they were mathematically impossible. No legitimate strategy could produce gains that smooth, that consistent, year after year, in markets that were anything but smooth or consistent. Markopoulos brought his findings to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Not once, repeatedly, over nearly a decade, he warned them that a fraud of staggering size was operating in plain sight. Each time the SEC looked, each time they missed it, because they were searching for a crack in the system. But Madoff had not just built a system, he had built trust so deep that no one wanted to be the first person to doubt it. That is the terrifying part. The lie did not survive because nobody asked questions. It survived because the right people stopped asking hard ones. The statements looked professional. The name looked safe. The access felt exclusive. The returns felt calm. And when a lie becomes part of a powerful circle's identity, doubt becomes socially expensive. For years, that trust held. Then, in the autumn of 2008, the entire financial world began to shake. And the one thing Bernie Madoff's empire could never survive finally arrived: withdrawals. By 2008, the global financial system was collapsing under its own weight. Markets were crashing, banks were failing, and investors everywhere needed one thing: cash. They started asking Madoff's fund for their money back. Not a few investors, not a trickle. Nearly $7 billion in redemption requests arrived all at once. And here is where the machine finally broke. Because the money investors thought they had was not there. It never had been. Inside the investment advisory business, there was no real split-strike strategy quietly compounding in the background. No real portfolio matching the statements. No real trades producing those impossible returns. For years, investigators believe for decades, Madoff had been running the oldest trick in finance: paying old investors with money from new investors. A Ponzi scheme, dressed in the finest suit Wall Street had ever seen. When the redemptions came due, there was nothing left to pay them with. On the night of December 10th, 2008, Madoff told his two sons the truth. The business, the empire, the trust, decades of steady, reliable returns had been a lie. His sons reported him the next morning. By December 11th, the FBI was at his door. When investigators opened the books, the number was almost impossible to comprehend. On paper, client accounts showed nearly $65 billion. Almost none of it had ever existed. In March of 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies. In June, he was sentenced to 150 years in prison. Thousands of investors lost savings, charitable funds collapsed, family fortunes disappeared. Foundations that had supported medical research, education, and the vulnerable were suddenly fighting to survive. The damage did not stay contained to balance sheets. It moved into homes, into marriages, into charities, into families. 2 years to the day after his father's arrest, Madoff's eldest son, Mark, took his own life. The empire built on trust had finished consuming the family that built it. Bernie Madoff did not succeed because he was a criminal mastermind. He succeeded because he understood something most people never say out loud. Trust is not always earned through transparency. Sometimes it is earned through belonging, the exclusivity, the closed doors, the sense of being let into something rare. That was not a marketing trick sitting on top of the fraud. It was the fraud. Because once people believe they are inside the circle that always wins, they stop asking how the circle works. For decades, regulators, banks, feeder funds, and some of the most sophisticated investors in the world looked directly at the numbers and chose not to see what did not add up. Not because they were all foolish, because doubting Bernie Madoff meant doubting the club they were proud to belong to. That is the lesson. The most dangerous lies do not always arrive as madness. Sometimes they arrive as consistency, as reputation, as a quiet office, as a man everyone important seems to trust. Charles Ponzi sold the dream of impossible profit. Bernie Madoff sold something more powerful: safety. And safety is the perfect disguise for risk. Wealth, in the end, is often belief made visible. And belief, once it spreads far enough, becomes almost impossible to question. Every system built on trust carries the same hidden weakness. It can survive almost anything except doubt. This happened once, on Wall Street, in plain sight, for decades. It is happening again, right now, somewhere, and the only people who see it coming are the ones willing to ask the question nobody else wants to ask. What if the thing everyone trusts is exactly where the lie is hiding? If you want to understand how power really works, not the version in textbooks, but the version hidden behind trust, money, and ambition, subscribe. Stryver uncovers the stories history tried to smooth over.